Welcome to The Explainer. You know that urge to just pack up, escape the daily grind, and get away from literally everyone? Well, today we're diving into 3 deeply unsettling first-hand accounts of people who did exactly that, only to find something far, far worse waiting for them in the quiet. We're going to deconstruct these experiences using the direct source material to figure out exactly how a peaceful sanctuary flips into an absolute nightmare. So let's jump right in.
Here is our dark little travel itinerary for this session. We're kicking things off with isolated islands and their dark secrets, then heading over to the main cottage stalker. After that, we're getting hunted on Hashima Island, then we'll face the North Brother Island mimic, and finally, we'll wrap up with some seriously lingering unanswered questions.
All right, Section 1, Isolated Islands, Dark Secrets, and Why Isolation Breeds Terror.
When you strip away the mainland, you basically strip away your entire safety net, right? I mean, look at this definition. Isolation literally means removing all external help or witnesses. And honestly, that's exactly what our first subject was actually looking for. He was this 22-year-old guy, completely burned out from work, just trying to put some serious distance between himself and a, let's say, colorful past. He just wanted to disappear for a few days. But, as we're about to see, being totally separate from others makes you incredibly vulnerable.
Moving right along to Section 2, the main cottage stalker and the horror of the known. So our guy books this suspiciously cheap, paper-thin little cottage on a mostly deserted island right off the coast of Maine. Now really pay attention to this one sensory detail. Tucked into a tiny cave, literally just 100 yards from his rental, was a single, totally out-of-place blue motorboat. The narrator even noted that all the other boats on the island were these big, heavy, commercial lobster vessels. This one tiny detail, sitting just a football field away, is the absolute anchor to the physical threat that's about to unfold.
Okay, watch how ridiculously fast this timeline escalates from a nice, peaceful evening into a totally trapped nightmare. By late afternoon, the ferry leaves and the island is completely dead empty. Around 10:30 p.m., the guy locks up for the night only to realize his phone charger, or maybe the outlet itself, is mysteriously busted, which completely guarantees his phone is going to die. Then, the middle of the night hits. He hears these slow, deliberate footsteps crunching on the gravel outside. And this wasn't an animal, guys. The steps actually paused whenever he shifted in his bed. And the climax? A flashlight starts tracing the edges of the door, followed immediately by hard, violent banging on the deadbolts. Someone was physically testing the locks of this flimsy little cabin. And then we get to the absolute most chilling part of the whole ordeal. Instead of just breaking the door down, the banging completely stops, and a total stranger on the other side of that thin wooden door speaks his actual name. "I know you're in there, Leo." I mean, no way, right? The stalker then spent the next hour or so just circling the tiny cottage, taunting him before eventually leaving. And the sound Leo heard fading into the dark distance? The distinct hum of a small outboard motor. That little blue boat.
So the stalker leaves, but it leaves us grappling with this terrifying, almost impossible logical puzzle. How in the world did they track him? I mean, he booked this place on super short notice, his co-worker swore up and down he didn't tell a single soul, yet somebody managed to navigate to that specific random island by boat on that exact night and knew exactly who was sitting inside. It is literally a masterclass in the sheer horror of premeditated stalking.
All right, Act 2, Section 3, Hunted on Hashima Island and the Horror of Conspiracy.
So for this one, we shift from a burnt-out worker to a structural engineering grad student studying concrete degradation. He gets this authorized research trip to a famous Japanese island, but it quickly devolves into absolute psychological terror. Hashima Island is this dense, decaying concrete maze that was totally abandoned back in the 1970s. Our narrator gets escorted by a local guide named Takeshi, who immediately lays out these extremely strict boundaries. They're supposedly there to protect them from the crumbling infrastructure. But notice that very last rule. Stay within visual range at all times. Takeshi actually repeated that one twice.
But look at how the physical reality of this place instantly shatters the rules of what a supposedly abandoned island should feel like. The narrator was totally expecting a lifeless ruin, right? But the reality? Up on the 4th floor of a residential block, he finds a super clear path worn right through decades of thick dust. He opens a door and gets hit with this unidentifiable, unnatural smell, and finds a concrete wall that is noticeably way warmer than any other surface on the island. When he points this out to Takeshi, the guide flat out refuses to investigate and just tells him it's impossible.
So here's where things go entirely off the rails. The tension just skyrockets when they enter an even taller residential block. The narrator finds definitive, undeniable proof of human habitation, a fresh pile of blankets and some empty water bottles. But the terrifying implications don't really hit until he turns around and realizes Takeshi, the same guide who was so obsessed with staying in visual range, has completely vanished. The narrator absolutely panics, sprints to the stairwell, and finds it entirely blocked by a massive pile of fresh rubble. He is intentionally trapped in this concrete maze, and that's exactly when multiple sets of unseen footsteps start rushing toward him down the corridors.
After a literally terrifying sprint for his life through the ruins and back out to the dock, the narrator manages to escape. But when he gets there, he finds Takeshi just casually standing by the boat, completely unfazed by the narrator's screaming and accusations. And here is the absolute kicker. Dr. Yamamoto, the highly esteemed professor who pulled all the strings to arrange this exclusive permit in the first place, he suddenly became a total ghost. For weeks afterward, the narrator couldn't get a hold of him anywhere. He had just completely disappeared.
This whole situation perfectly captures the true horror of conspiracy. I mean, you really have to ask yourself, who actually piled that rubble in the stairwell while the narrator was in that room? Why did Takashi use his two-way radio in secret earlier that day? The physical isolation of Hashima was creepy enough for sure, but the isolation of realizing the exact people you trusted might be actively orchestrating your demise, that is infinitely worse.
And that brings us to our climax in Act 3, Section 4, The North Brother Island Mimic, and the Horror of the Impossible.
This one explores the horror of the absolutely impossible through this illicit urban exploration dare in the forgotten ruins right in New York's East River. Notice the heavily premeditated nature of this whole excursion. You've got 3 college students, our narrator, Jansen, and Jesse, systematically cutting themselves off from the total safety of the city, which is literally just a half-mile away. They paddle out at 2 a.m. to this overgrown, defunct quarantine hospital. They even hide their kayaks deep in the heavy reeds, actively making sure nobody knows they're there. They literally manufactured their own isolation. So the narrator ends up getting separated from his friends because he refuses to sit there and watch them spray paint these historical ruins. He's walking completely alone down this pitch-black hospital hallway when he hears his friend Jesse's exact voice call his name from up ahead. When he calls back to ask where he is, the voice responds from a dark doorway just a few doors down. It says, perfectly mimicking his friend's exact tone, "In here."
But what is truly terrifying about this is the sheer physical impossibility of what happens next. The narrator sweeps his flashlight into that pitch-black room, fully expecting to see his buddy, Jesse. Instead, the beam of light hits this towering figure facing the wall, a figure that is at least 6.5 feet tall, massively taller than either Jesse or Jansen. The narrator just screams and absolutely sprints for his life.
He manages to reunite with his actual friends, who are totally freaked out by his sheer panic, and all 3 of them just run. But as they're frantically dragging their kayaks back into the water, this horrifying auditory detail actually chases them through the darkness. All 3 of them clearly hear the faint, distinct moaning of an older woman crying or wincing in pain, echoing out from the pitch-dark tree line right behind them. What completely shatters all logic here is the voice itself. We aren't just dealing with some tall trespasser squatting in an abandoned hospital. The narrator stresses that he knows his best friend's voice as well as he knows his own. This entity impossibly mimicked a trusted friend to try and lure him into a dark, isolated room. And the stark reality of the situation? Jesse was hanging out with Jansen the entire time. They were nowhere even close to that hallway. All right, Section 5, lingering unanswered questions and our final terrifying thoughts.
As we wrap up this explainer, we're really just left trying to connect the dark threads of these 3 separate accounts. Across all of this, we've escalated from grounded physical stalking in Maine to gaslighting and institutional conspiracy in Japan, all the way up to an impossible paranormal mimicry in New York. And literally none of these have been solved. The narrator in Maine still lives in the same town, knowing someone out there has his exact profile. That grad student who went to Hashima will forever wonder who is surviving in those concrete ruins and why his professor just vanished off the face of the earth. And those urban explorers, they will never know what 6.5-foot entity tried to lure them into the dark using a stolen voice.
So, the crucial point to take away from all this is pretty simple. When you strip away society to find some peace and quiet, you are also completely stripping away your safety net. Before you seek out the quiet of a deserted island, you really have to ask yourself what else might be out there, waiting for you in the dark. What actually happens when the isolation you seek
becomes the exact trap you cannot escape. Definitely something to think about the next time you feel the urge to just get away from it all.